all for being here. My name is Jim Quadra. My law firm Quadra & Call represents Senator Cervantes in her claim against the City of Sacramento for her false arrest. Today we are filing a government claim with the City of Sacramento. The claim is a precursor or a prerequisite to being able to sue a public entity in court. The claim details the basis for the unlawful arrest and the claims that flow from that. Copies of the claim have been distributed to media outlets. If you do not have one, let us know and we will forward them to you. Again, the claim arises out of a wrongful arrest that occurred on May 19th, 2025, when Senator Cervantes was the victim of a car accident. Despite clear evidence that there was no probable cause for the arrest and that the senator was completely sober, nonetheless, the police accused her falsely of driving under the influence without any evidence and then disseminated that false information in an attempt to hurt her reputation. We have now submitted a detailed claim that you have seen. Normally, claims that are submitted to public entities are not that detailed. They just have to put the public entity on notice. The reason we opted to have a very detailed description of the events and how they hurt and harmed the reputation of the senator is because we want to dispel the false statements that have been made publicly by the police. We want to also tell you that we believe, based on the evidence we have gathered so far, that these claims were motivated by retaliation against the senator for her political work against the misuse of license plate readers that have been criticized throughout the state because of law enforcement abuse. We also believe that the claim is in part motivated by bias against the senator because of our identity as a Latina member of the LGBTQ+ community. Now the city has 45 days to respond to the claim. If they reject the claim, we will then proceed to be able to file a lawsuit in court. Later this week, or early next week, we plan to release video cam footage that we were able to obtain from the police department. We are going through a review of it to carefully protect the rights of third parties to the right to privacy. And once we have done that review, we intend to disseminate that cam footage so that the truth can be seen by all. We want to make sure the public is fully aware of the harm that occurred here. If it can happen to the senator, it can happen to any one of us. And we have to be protective. And this lawsuit is not just about the civil rights that were violated here, but also about the trust that we should have in the police, which this case shows is not worthy at this time. We have to improve the system, and the senator is standing up for not only herself, but other Californians. I'd like to introduce the senator, who will give a brief statement, and we can answer some questions after that. However, any questions relating to the lawsuit or the claim should be directed at me. And before the senator speaks, I did want to read to you a statement that was sent to us, and I'll pull it up, by the pro tem president, Mike McGuire. Senator Cervantes has shown remarkable integrity and strength of character throughout this deeply unfortunate process, and she has my full support. Through this entire ordeal, she has never stopped fighting for the people of the Inland Empire and all of California. We are lucky to have her in the state Senate. With that, I'll turn it over to the senator. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for those who are able to join us today. I want my constituents and the people of California to know the facts. On Monday, May 19th, I was a victim of a traffic collision. My sedan was T-boned by a large SUV that ran through a stop sign. While I was seeking care in the emergency room, I was falsely accused of driving under the influence and detained for several hours at the hospital. This ordeal was deeply distressing and left me even more shaken. This is not only about what happened to me, it is about accountability. And if this could happen to me, this can happen to anyone. No Californian should be falsely arrested, defamed, or retaliated against because of who they are or what they stand for. The abuse of power that I endured undermines public trust and cannot be ignored. As a senator, as a wife, and a mother, I hold myself to the highest standards and expect others who serve our communities to do the same. I want to thank my wife, my family, my community, supporters, my colleagues who have stood with me through this very trying time and during what has been a very emotional and challenging time. Thank you.
Any of you have questions? The claim does describe that, and we will have some video footage of that as well. Just to make sure you all understand, because you'll see the video footage, the senator was in the waiting room of the hospital waiting to be treated for injuries suffered during the accident. The police approach her without warning. She is wearing a sunglasses and she's sitting inside the waiting room, which is very large, protecting her privacy. They then tried to change that narrative to say that because she was wearing sunglasses, somehow that was some indication that they had the right to assume she was under the influence, which is ridiculous. She was simply in a waiting room. They also tried to then argue that because she went to the hospital of her own accord, driven by a member of her staff, that somehow that was evidence of some wrongdoing. They told her it is more common to have a fire department or an ambulance pick you up, which of course the senator responded, that would be a waste of public assets if I have available to me an ability to get to the hospital, which is what she did. Somehow that was turned around to make it sound like they had evidence, falsely, that there was something wrong with the situation and they could detain and arrest her.
I'm just wondering, you mentioned that the agency, city has 45 days to respond. You mentioned that the city has 45 days to respond, and if they reject the claim, you will move forward with a lawsuit. I just wonder, what are the other options for a resolution for this claim?
The options lie with the city once we file the claim. If they want to review the city wants to review the claim in detail. If they want to talk to the senator through us, we will obviously listen and see if we can work something out. They have a 45-day period to do that. They can extend that period if they want to talk to us. But it is 100% in their corner. They can reject it by operation of law if they do not respond, and then we can still go forward, or they can reject it in writing. They can also engage in negotiations, which we believe they should, given the overwhelming evidence that has been presented to them and the evidence they have available to them by the video cams that show that this was completely false.
When do you plan to file the complaint?
Well, we have to first get a rejection. We can't do it without that. So
File the claim already?
it will be filed today. It's been submitted today they're working it through their process. We submitted it to the city.
And one more question. It says that you guys are seeking more than $25,000 for
Correct.
damages. Is there a number, or is it just more than 25,000?
At this point, it's just more than 25,000. As we develop the case, the facts, we will determine what is a reasonable resolution given the damages suffered here, both reputationally and the emotional distress, obviously, of being accused falsely.
So the complaint specifically calls out Senate Bill 274 and the Sacramento Police Chief. Can you just give maybe a little bit more evidence as to why you believe that that bill was the motivating factors in what happened on May 19th?
Yeah, when you look at these cases, you look at proximity and time. So when you look at it, the proximity and time becomes a piece of evidence related to potential motive. Let me make it clear, though, we do not need motive to establish that a probable cause was not present here and that it was a false arrest. That alone gives rise to a civil rights violation. But if you add the animus here, it becomes worse, and motivation can lead to punitive damages. So what we're trying to establish, we could do that through discovery, is how is it that on the sort of as this bill is working its way through, and it's being led by the senator, that suddenly the police take this step against her. And then you look at the evidence of the violations that have occurred throughout the state and law enforcement agencies nonetheless fighting to prevent the bill from being passed, including Sacramento was accused and proven in an audit by the grand jury to have violated the rules regarding what information was shared after obtained through the license plate readers. And so that's why in proximity and time, it just fits that the evidence indicates at this point that that was part of what led this.
This was my first isolated incident with the Sacramento Police Department.
Following up on the arrest itself, was there, from your perspective, was there a process that was violated by these officers? Was there anything that they did independent that was outside of the boundaries of what the normal process ought to be?
There is a series of violations, I would say. First, they tried to intimidate the senator into agreeing to a subjective test to see if she was under the influence, saying that it was routine and they could do this by looking at her eyes, and that somehow they were qualified by looking at her eyes to determine whether she had been under the influence of any drugs or alcohol. The senator, rightly so, was confused because she was the victim of an accident and said, well, is this happening to the other driver, who you would think would be investigated fully since they ran a stop sign and T-boned her car? They refused to answer that question. That intimidation, I think it's violating process because it is implying to the senator that she has the duty to do this. They then sought a warrant for a blood test that the senator had agreed to give them and went to the court and said that she had refused to do that. And that alone is another violation of process. What you have here is a fabrication of a declaration submitted to the court that somehow they had the evidence sufficient to get a warrant to get a blood test. So that was absolutely false. They said she slurred her speech. Not true. They said that she was confused. Not true. They said that she refused to cooperate in giving a test. Well, she didn't. She said, I don't want to do the subjective one. I can give you a blood test. Let me check with my lawyer on how that works. And before she could come back, you will see evidence in the cam footage where one of the officers says to the other one, after talking to somebody on the phone and then turning off their cam for 5 minutes, coming back and saying, hey, we're going to get a warrant regardless. It doesn't matter that she's willing to do it. They're still going to go and get a warrant because a warrant embarrasses somebody. It says that they were uncooperative. They get to submit sworn false evidence to the judge. The judge believing it issues the warrant. So there was a whole slew of violations. The worst, even after the arrest, they violated process because they submitted to the Department of Motor Vehicles a false statement saying that the senator had refused to comply with giving a blood test after she had been arrested. That didn't occur. She was arrested, the blood test was taken. So there's a whole slew of violations of process.
Was the other driver cited?
No. The other driver, well, they were cited subsequent to the accident. They were cited for not having their license with them. But at the scene, when the officer that was investigating this, that also came to the hospital, approached her, she said, I do not have my license with me. That is a violation. You can get cited immediately for that. He said it's fine. He didn't ask her to get out of the car. He didn't check her gait. He didn't check her eyes or ask to check her eyes. She was already accompanied by another person who came after the accident. And he basically said, it's all fine, and then led her by saying, you weren't drinking today, right? And she said, no. But he didn't get close enough. She never got out of her vehicle. He didn't check to see if she smelled of alcohol. None of that was done with that officer, by the officer with that witness or the other driver. We would not get notice of internal investigations. That's protected information. However, we had very difficult time getting the cam footage ourselves, and the senator's entitled to it. They may be issues of privacy because the location of where this investigation took place was very public. There was a hospital, there were people getting care. So there's a lot of blurring that has to occur. There's a lot of audio that has to cut out people's names as they're being called. So there may be some of that. We are troubled, though, by the cam footage. I don't know what grounds they're claiming not to provide it to you because there is no investigation relating to the senator, right? However, we're also troubled by the fact that the cam footage was actually cut, and that this Officer Foster cuts the audio and the video, and then there's a conversation with a superior officer about what's going on, and then comes back after that and says, we're going to get a warrant regardless. So that conversation clearly relates, in our mind, to the discussion about getting the warrant. There's also a sergeant that was, we believe, communicated over the phone. You hear the officers talking to Sarge about the events and what they're going to do. A sergeant then responds to the scene. We have repeatedly requested the body cam footage for that officer and have not yet received it. Oh, it backs it up. It backs it up. We believe we'll be able to deal with third-party privacy issues and at least give you the body cam footage that relates to the communications between the officers and some of the communications that occurred in without violating privacy with the senator.
This, unfortunately, has been a very challenging time over the last several months that not just myself I've had to endure, but my wife, my family, by extension, my staff. I've had folks who've asked for my resignation because of this incident, of these false allegations. These are attacks that I get every week since this event unfolded and since it was pushed out to the media.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if we can't get an apology, we'll get a judgment. The point is, these lies get spread, but apologies are not given. They've known since the blood test results came back, even if they actually believed it, which they had no basis to, that there was absolutely nothing wrong done by the senator. Yet no one from the department has spoken to apologize for what they did to her. And moreover, they haven't explained how the information regarding her arrest was disseminated before they had even concluded their own investigation. Yet it happened. Obviously, somebody from the department gave that information up.
Readers might be confused about how a citation equals arrest. In this case, can you explain a little bit more
Yeah.
what that?
A citation language in the penal code for DUI is actually an arrest. And during the hospital interaction with the officers, they told her, you're going to be cited, you're under arrest. So you can do it two ways. You can arrest somebody, handcuff them, and take them to a station. You can cite them to appear. But it is an arrest.
With the legislator standing here in solidarity with you, I'm curious to know, from a legislative process and the powers that the legislature has, do you anticipate anything from your particular case leading to some sort of a legislative investigation?
I don't think that, well, the legislators can speak to what they investigate, but this type of violation is under the government code specifically spelled out as the rights of the individual, whether they're a senator, whether they're a lawyer, whether they're reporters, are the same. So we're not trying to gain advantage in any way simply because of the status of the senator. But her status points out how fragile our system is and how easily it can be violated by those people we're supposed to trust, and that's law enforcement. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for being here.